Okay, so, yes, Vanessa Neumann. So what I'm discussing tonight is the basis of a book I'm working on, trying to balance sort of a day job and writing a book, and I'm also writing a novel. I mean, it's too much. Anyway, but the book is progressing a little slower than I would like, but it's progressing. And its title is Grievance to Greed, the Crime Terror Nexus. So, okay, or you go?
Sure.
Yeah, there we go. So, what is the crime terror nexus? The old view of the problem that there were two problems, right? You had criminals and you had terrorists. And the idea was that the terrorists all would hang out together. We knew about the FARC, training in Libya, and the IRA, training with the FARC, and all of that in Colombia, and they travel around and they swap information and technology and all of that for decades. We've been hearing about that. And we also hear about criminals, trafficking groups, crossing borders, and smugglers, and drug traffickers, and there was a little bit of overlay in the first term of crime terror pipelines ever is narco-terrorism. Of course, that's like the first term that links the two types of criminal behavior, but they were considered to be very different. That criminals didn't want anything to do with terrorists, and terrorists don't want anything to do with criminals for a number of reasons. Terrorists are ideological. They're all about making a splash, right? An act of terror is actually a speech act, not a pleasant one, but it's a speech act, right? You want to get people to notice your cause, to change the political system, to inspire terror, obviously. Whereas criminals need to move large amounts of goods, large amount of money. They want to be covert. They just want to keep carrying on in the long term. So really, neither one wants to do business with the other because they have the ideologues don't want to do business with the criminals, and the criminals are like, oh, we're not, we don't want to deal with the ideologues. What I'm arguing is what we're seeing is something called a threat convergence. You can tell I've spent too much time with the Defense Department how to use terms like that. But it is actually, I think it was 2011, the White House under Obama signed the paper asserting that transnational organized crime, we call them TOCs, T-O-C, transnational organized criminals, represent a tier 1 national security concern. So it's official. You have the UN Convention against Transnational Organized Crime. So it's now like a thing in thinking and international policy. The idea is that we are seeing them converge. We're seeing them do more business together. That there is not just the using one as a proxy for the other, which in some ways was always the case, but that in and of itself is happening a lot more. But we're also seeing that they converge a lot more and use a lot of the same fixers and facilitators. And that's something that we call strategic nodes. So what has happened is that they learn from each other much faster, the technology swap, and the reasons for that is exactly what the topic is of my talk tonight. Also, the interaction between criminals and terrorists creates what we call, or what I've called, a positive externality. I'm not sure others have called it that, but I am in my book, which is basically a symbiotic destabilization of government. The existence of one group weakens the government and the state, which is a common enemy for both groups, and creates a positive environment for the other one to flourish, right? You're exhausting state resources. You're both against law enforcement. So that makes it easier for each other, for the other one. And that's why, as I said, narco-terrorism. So, crime terror pipelines. One big aspect of it is something called is illicit trafficking, right? The crime aspect of it. It's huge business. There's another reason why terrorism is getting increasingly into drug trafficking, cigarette trafficking, and everything else. Counterfeiting. You all heard about Al-Shabaab, the attacks just now that they're very funded by ivory smuggling, and the Algerian kidnappings in January was Mokhtar Belmokhtar, also known as Mr. Marlboro, because they were heavily funded by smuggling tobacco through the Western Sahel, basically either counterfeited or contraband tobacco. And this is, so now here you can see just how big a business that is. And if you are on a jihad or want to overthrow your government, in anywhere, you want access to that money. So it's $650 billion illicit trafficking. That's considered a reasonable estimate. Mostly drugs, but also counterfeiting. And here is some of the numbers, some of the breakdowns, right? Even trafficking in humans, human trafficking, what we would call sort of modern day slavery. So CTP, so the product goes out and the money comes in. And then feeds, again, some of these guys. You have Sendero Luminoso, you have FARC, you have others, right? Here's another thing that's really interesting is the role of borders, right? So you have the classic case amongst law enforcement and intelligence agencies, their favorite hotspot on earth has traditionally been what they call the tri-border area, right? It's like all the baddies mixed together. Because you have three countries, like one city basically crossing over three different countries. Ciudad del Este, Foz de Iguaçu, and so everything that goes from around, not everything, but basically across Paraguay, Brazil, and Argentina, you have huge amounts of laundering. About $6 billion a year is laundered through there, and actually, and so much so that apparently you can go through at night in the Ciudad del Este, like armored cars leave at night with just sort of loads of cash. And you have absolutely everything hanging out together. Your local sort of counterfeiters and DVD pirates, although I'm still amazed that anybody sells counterfeit DVDs. Like, really? That's still a problem? Okay, but it is. Everything from that to human trafficking, weapons, everything else, and tobacco. Tobacco is a huge problem there. I've been working a lot with my private, with my consulting firm, tobacco smuggling issues, and I had no idea how big it was until I started working on it. And billions of cigarettes go through. That's actually their highest profit margin product moving through there. And you have everything from Chinese triads. You have Lebanese, you have Hezbollah, Gama al-Islamiyya, and you even have a big shopping center that's owned by the Barakat network, which is a known supplier of Hezbollah. They just have sort of big shopping center full of counterfeit goods, a bit like the silk market in Beijing, which is not actually a silk market, it's a counterfeit market. Been there, it's pretty amazing.